Excellencies, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to be part of this special event in the run-up to the 18th session of the Commission on Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture to discuss the role of biodiversity for food and agriculture in the emerging global biodiversity policies landscape. Let me start by recognizing the critical work of the Commission on Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture. As we strive to secure universal access to sufficient, nutritious, safe, healthy, and affordable food for a population that is projected to grow to almost 10 billion in 2050, it becomes clear that the work of both the Commission and the Convention on Biological Diversity are intrinsically linked. As a dedicated intergovernmental body working on biodiversity for food and agriculture, the role of the Commission, not only for ongoing negotiations of Post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, but for its future implementation, cannot be understated. From issues related to digital sequencing information, aquatic resources, forests, plant genetic resources to biotechnologies, and biodiversity for food and agriculture, nutrition and human health, the work of the Commission will continue to inform and accompany the work of the Convention and the delivery of its mandates in the decades to come. The recent discussions at the third meeting of the Open-Ended Working Group on the Post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework have highlighted the importance of food and agriculture and the need to simultaneously engage the agriculture and environment sectors. But this is not a recent realization. At the 2016 UN Biodiversity Conference held in Cancun, Mexico, ministers of agriculture, fisheries, and forests came together with ministers of environment to commit to work together at all levels to promote the mainstreaming of biodiversity in these sectors. Parties to the convention welcomed the establishment by FAO of the platform on biodiversity mainstreaming to take forward these efforts. It is extremely encouraging that we see how the platform gained momentum and galvanized support from across ministries, organizations, and stakeholders at national, regional, and global levels. It is also encouraging to see FAO applying this momentum and developing the 2021 to 2023 action plan for the implementation of the FAO strategy on mainstreaming biodiversity across agricultural sectors. Furthermore, CBD's COP Decision 3/3 invited FAO to consider developing a global plan of action on the basis and in response to the State of the World's Biodiversity for Food and Agriculture report. It is encouraging that the Commission decided that this response, as outlined in the document Biodiversity for Food and Agriculture, revised draft needs and possible actions, should contribute to the implementation of the CBD Post-2020 framework, as well as the achievements of the Sustainable Development Goals. And of course, we are pleased to see this reflected in the objectives of the revised draft needs and possible actions. This will ensure coherence and help maximize synergies for on-the-ground implementation of the new framework. Colleagues, we know that biodiversity is essential for food security and nutrition globally. Without healthy nature and biodiversity, we cannot have quality nutrition. And without quality nutrition, we cannot have good health. But biodiversity has been slowly disappearing from our diets. Recent scientific reports have made it clear that the conversion and degradation of our ecosystems and the services they provide is adversely impacting human well-being, especially poor and vulnerable people in poor countries. This means that we have focused on exploiting the services that have market value, production of food, fiber, energy, at the expense of the services that have no market prices but have economic and social values like pollination, soil health, climate, and water regulation. The State of the World's Biodiversity for Food and Agriculture report indicated that many of the key components of biodiversity for food and agriculture at genetic, species, and ecosystem levels are in decline. But the report also demonstrates that biodiversity is not only indispensable for food security, but also for supporting agricultural productivity and underpinning the resilience of agricultural and food systems. Agrobiodiversity can be an incredibly powerful lever in addressing biodiversity loss, climate change, land degradation, malnutrition, poverty, and food insecurity in a holistic manner. Agrobiodiversity can help improve nutrition and support livelihood. Landscapes with greater crop diversity generate a greater diversity of nutrients essential for human health. And crop diversity also stabilizes food production, improves crop yields, and supports more agricultural jobs. By serving as a source of habitat and food, crop diversity can also support the diverse species that pollinate our plants, control our pests, and cycle essential nutrients within our soils. These species are essential for maintenance and restoration of productive ecosystems for our food security. In conclusion, I would like to highlight a few contributions the food and agriculture sectors can make to the implementation of the Post-2020 Biodiversity Framework and how the framework may support the food and agriculture sectors in transforming agri-food systems, including by conserving and sustainably using genetic resources for food and agriculture. Firstly, the 5th edition of the Global Biodiversity Outlook, published in 2020, makes these connections and highlights both the need to reduce the negative impacts of food and agricultural sectors on biodiversity and how the use and management of biodiversity in agricultural ecosystems can support and sustainability and productivity of these sectors. Two important pathways address these issues, and both can move us from business as usual towards transformative changes. The Sustainable Agriculture Transition, which suggests redesigning agricultural systems through agroecological and other innovative approaches to enhance productivity while minimizing negative impacts on biodiversity. And Sustainable Food Systems Transitions, which promotes sustainable and healthy diets with a greater emphasis on a diversity of food and more moderate consumption of meat and fish, as well as dramatic cuts in the waste involved in the supply of food and consumption. Secondly, food systems represent a major interface for nature's contribution to people and harbor vital traditional knowledge of genetic resources for food and agriculture. Specifically, food systems contribute food and associated livelihood, cultural, and healthy benefits to people. For example, contributing to Goal B of the Draft 1 of the framework, and rely on traditional and scientific knowledge of the locally adapted species, varieties, and farming methods to ensure sustainable use of genetic resources. This means that we need the agriculture and environment sector to work together. We need engagement at all levels. In this regard, we must remember that smallholders are stewards of biodiversity and play a key role in maintaining the genetic diversity of our food supply, which results in both benefits and risks reduction against nutritional deficiencies, ecosystem degradation, and climate change. For example, smaller farms on average have higher yields and have a greater crop and non-crop biodiversity at the farm and landscape scales than do larger farms. Most of the commodities produced on small farms come from diverse landscapes, producing a variety of horticulture, roots, tubers, fish, and livestock. However, smallholders need our support. Most of the world's farms, over 80%, are operated by smallholders, and yet most are grappling with chronic food insecurity and lack of access to formal safety nets. Smallholders are also increasingly vulnerable because they rely on ecosystem services that are under increasing pressure as a result of climate change. It is therefore crucial that we invest in smallholder farmers. We need to ensure they have access to markets. We need to empower and engage women farmers, and we must support entrepreneurship among the smallholders. And finally, a strong monitoring and evaluation framework provides the basis to track progress across shared agendas and to inform policy decisions and target interventions. The goals and targets of the Post-2020 framework are complemented by a monitoring framework, which will include a set of agreed indicators for tracking national and global progress. With regards to food systems, many of the indicators have been fully aligned with existing indicators used to track food systems within the Sustainable Development Goals and for which FAO is a custodian. Examples include food waste, proportion of agricultural area under sustainable agriculture management, land use planning, and maintenance of agriculture and livestock genetic resources. There is also a dedicated target which specifically references the importance of sustainable agriculture, aquaculture, and forests. However, these should not be seen as the only indicator related to food systems. There are also targets and target components related to land and sea use planning, sustainable harvest of wild species, maintaining genetic diversity of agriculture and livestock species, ensuring food security benefits from wild species, reducing nutrition and pesticides pollution, and promoting sustainable lifestyles through, for example, reducing food waste. As indicated in the document, Biodiversity for Food and Agriculture, revised draft needs and possible actions wherever possible. Let us use and integrate as relevant and to the extent possible existing assessment and monitoring systems, for example, those to be developed under the Post-2020 framework, and existing data and indicators at national, regional, and global levels, and explore the potential of indicators that serve multiple purposes. Dear colleagues, the 18th session of the Commission on Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture will address many issues that are at the core of the work of the CBD and that will be critical for the adoption of a robust and ambitious Post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. This represents a major opportunity to scale up the efforts to strengthen and develop our institutional, legislative, and regulatory frameworks to support enhanced maintenance, restoration, and use of biodiversity for agriculture. We have enough evidence that sustainably managed food production systems can support and enhance biodiversity and achieve multiple other benefits like reducing carbon emissions. The voices of the agricultural sector will be essential in designing an effective framework and in redesigning our food and agricultural systems. We need your knowledge, experience, and commitment. Let us work together to make food system transitions to a new economic and social paradigm that values nature for people, planet, and prosperity. Thank you.